Welcome to another episode of Love and Reality Podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down Patti Stanger, the Matchmaker, episode 2. The show airs on the CW, 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. Last night's episode was another solid episode, but let's dive in. What is Patti Stanger, the Matchmaker? For those of you watching for the first time, Patti's the ultimate love guru. She's back doing things she does best, helping people find love by working with them in person and teaching them the real tools and rules to become the most eligible versions of themselves. But this time, Patti has a new partner, the Bachelor alum Nick Viall. Is joining her to tackle some of the most challenging clients yet. No case is off limits or too difficult for Patti and Nick to crack. Each episode will feature two clients desperate to find love, with Patti and Nick pushing them to face their fears, identify their emotional core, and in the end, emerge ready to find the one. These are real dates, real people, real matches, and real love. Last week's episode, we did have two celebrity-ish as people. This week, we are going back just to the average Joe with this week's episode featuring Jessica, looking for love, and Cody. Like I did last week, I'm going to break down Jessica's portion of the show, Cody's portion of the show, and then kind of give you my overall thoughts on what went down. Before we jump in, if you could do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button here on the YouTube channel. The Love and Reality Podcast is also available everywhere you listen to your podcast. I am doing the Patti Stanger, the Matchmaker, exclusively here on the YouTube channel, but if you do me a great favor and support the channel over there as well, I would greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys so much. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about Jessica first. Jessica, she had said she had lowered her standards. She's afraid to live the rest of her life alone. It's been 3 years since she was in a meaningful relationship. Her last, she wants a family-oriented, trustworthy, and does not want kids. She does face the challenges of alopecia, where her hair does fall out, and hasn't been able to be herself since her last relationship. Kind of hearing her open up about this was really emotional, because you're listening to a woman who doesn't feel that same energy that she did about her once self, but she also understands that there's a layer of herself that she has to reveal to a man to really put herself out there for the universe to see. And that could be very hard and very troubling and very exhausting. So I felt that empathetic nature of her very early on. They set her up with some practice dates. Jessica and Nick are tagging along, giving some advice. Nick I like what he said here, to give the small talk. When you're delivering that small talk, get the answers you want. When you're starting to have the conversations early on in a relationship, ask questions that you want to know. Don't small talk your way into weeks of wasting your time whenever you're ultimately figuring out things that you might not like in that person, or they might have deal breakers that you won't have. So give that advice. That advice is essential. I think anybody listening to this or anybody that watches this episode, don't go overly aggressive with it, but do ask the questions that you want to hear the answers to, so that you can justify and figure out whether or not this person that you're going to spend your time with is worthy of having that conversation. But the fake dates, guys, it was funny. The guys' names were Christian and Gray. Obviously hilarious, Christian and Gray, if you put them together. But I was really impressed here for somebody that had said that she wasn't confident. Jessica showed a lot of confidence in talking to the guys, whether it was both of them at the same time or whether it was one-on-one. She did get a little startled whenever one of the guys talked about loving her hair, but she got a little hesitant, but got back on her feet. I thought this was a nice little jump start for her. Jessica starts. Nick and Patti put her on a date with Dustin. Dustin is a dinosaur guy. He studies dinosaurs and stuff like that. I felt like Dustin came in a little strong at the beginning of the date, but Jessica seemed okay with it. They were riding swans in a lake. It was kind of adorable, but it was Jessica's one of her favorite things to do. It put her in an environment to feel comfortable. I felt like early on she was kind of vibing with Dustin, but he mentioned she mentioned the kids were a no-go, and Dustin was like he's looking for a partner, and was like that's obviously the next step. So it almost felt like it was like a deal breaker really fast, but they continued to vibe a little bit, which I kind of appreciated, that she stuck it out a little bit and didn't just get stuck in that moment. They start talking about food. Octopus got brought up, and she said she likes tentacles and somehow thinks they're sexy, and then somehow tentacle porn gets brought into this, and then fetishes get brought up. His was butts, which isn't like, she was like talking about like a weird fetish, and he brought up butts, which wasn't really weird at all, but she was like, she likes to play dress up. And then this is where things kind of got a little bit interesting. She said she brought up dressing up as Freddie, but she shaved her head to do it. He wasn't sure. It was like a funny moment, but then she kind of got serious about it. But he was really supportive and really authentic towards the idea of what she's having to go through. So I thought that was a nice little step. And before we go over the overall thing, we're going to jump right on over to Cody. Cody was a project manager in construction. He feels proud of him. He wants somebody to feel proud of him. He wants to go to war with them, but also just genuinely trust, lay on the couch, relax a little bit. He explained some of the things that haven't gone his way, but Patti kind of shuts his ass down, and I kind of died laughing. It's been 3 years since his last serious relationship. It was 6 months long, but didn't feel like that was going where he had wanted it to go. They kind of put Cody on the spot. She brings in Nick here again to really kind of teach him some avenues. Cody was very stiff. He lacks the assertiveness. He's got the feminism to him. He's a little laid back, but I like that about him. But also he's a very big dude, and he lacks the kind of assertiveness of trying to take over, but not overly take over, if that makes sense to you guys. Nick is along for the ride to kind of teach him stuff. They have him at a dancing lesson where they kind of want him to take lead in the dancing, and he just refused to do it. Some of the girls that were there kind of gave him advice. He wasn't necessarily leading or listening, and kind of Patti kind of came in and gave him the business a little bit. He's a little bit stiff as a board, and they're trying to get him to lead. I do believe that Nick sat him down, read him like a book. They had a good conversation. He's just trying to explain to him that he needs to be a little bit more open, a little bit more assertive, and that could go a long way. They sent him on a date with Kristen. This was, again, the aspect of the things where I love where it says, talking about the show, these are all real dates, real people, real matches, and real love. And the reason I believe that wholeheartedly is because you have moments like this where Cody sits down to talk to Kristen, and they are talking about eating at the restaurant, and then afterwards you can go play putt-putt, or you can go back and forth. And in that moment, Cody says he was an avid stroker. And obviously he's talking about his golf game, but just how it comes out in that moment of the date, I just thought it was really funny. There's so many little things about this Cody character that really enhances the idea that these are real dates. Which not to say that I don't believe it, but it's just, you really believe it because of the things that he says. And there was another moment as they're having a little drink. He goes, "Let's go play some mini putt." First off, I've never in my life heard anybody say mini putt. Obviously, he meant mini golf. It was just kind of funny. He was very nervous, but it was also adorable in the aspect of he is nervous. He's excited but anxious. And then I really feel like he kind of found his own. He found out, I felt like he was attracted to Kristen. He felt like he had a little bit going on with her. So he kind of turns the game into like a truth or dare. She said truth, and he asked her what her last trip was on, and then of course she did a dare, which makes him take his shirt off because she was cold. She was enamored by what she saw. I thought these two vibed well off of each other. I don't know if it's a long lasting relationship that we're looking for, but I do think that they had a strong connection early on. Overall, this is what we got overall. Cody is heading for a second date as they hit it off. They talked about how Cody told Patti and Nick it was a great date. And then, of course, talked about how they have a second one lined up. Patti started talking about kissing and the way you should kiss and stuff like that. And Nick, the looks were just, the way he looked at her was hilarious. It was just a funny, weird moment that we're all, like, even me, I was just like, what? It was just funny, funny little moment. Again, Patti doesn't have a filter, and I think that's what makes her great, and that's what makes this show very good, is the lack of filter. Jessica calls Patti, mentioning that it was kind of a deal breaker because Dustin kind of wanted kids. He didn't really say that. He said that was like the obvious next step, but he said he was kind of in the midst of it was a yay or nay type of scenario. And Patti even brings up saying, hey, she thought this was more of an excuse because, you know, she thought that Dustin would be in line of, all right, well, maybe she doesn't want kids, then I don't want kids type of thing. Allowing the woman to kind of dictate that. But she said she would go back to the drawing board. Overall, another solid episode. Two people that needed a little bit of a pep in their step to get back into the world, and Nick and Patti continue to work well together, which to me is the highlight of the entire show. I did like seeing Nick give Cody the business about himself. He's got to give them the authenticity and the truth about what he sees, and he's not been afraid to do it. I think Patti is doing the same thing. I think they're both giving great advice. It's almost a good cop, bad cop type of thing. The show is very good. I really find myself enjoying it based on these real dates, and then of course the connection between Nick and Patti. Folks, episode 3 of Patti Stanger, the Matchmaker, will air on the CW every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, we'll talk to you guys next week.